Hello, everyone, and welcome to eLearnChat, where talk is knowledge. Well, we may not have a lot of talk today because, unfortunately, we can't get a hold of our guest, who is James Kingsley. He is an Articulate MVP, an e-learning specialist, and he seems like a really good guy. Unfortunately, we can't get a hold of him. He may have a power issue or maybe something else happened. His Skype is offline, it looks like, and not responding to email. So unfortunately, we will have him on another time unless he happens to call in. Joining me today, gracious enough to come join us at the last moment, Don Mahoney is at Presentation Summit this week, and we've got with us Diane Smith from Everest CS, which is www.yeseverest.com. Let me put her on over here. How you doing, Diane?
Hey, I'm great. How are you there? You're north of me in California, and I'm south of you in Southern California.
Yeah, what are we, about 100 miles apart?
Yeah, or 2 days in LA traffic.
2 days into 3 weeks. So anyway, well, it was really nice of you to come today, and I know we were planning on talking Articulate Storyline with James, and you do a lot of Storyline.
I do a lot of Storyline. I do.
Yeah. So how's Storyline treating you?
Well, Storyline treats me pretty good. I've had quite a few new customers, clients, because I do Storyline, and I help them learn Storyline, and a lot of the courses that I build are in Storyline, so it treats me just fine. How about you?
I like it. I think it's fun. A lot of times people ask me what I think of it, and I think on the whole, I think it's really cute. And that's not an insult. I think it creates cute pieces. And again, partly because of the way they did certain things. I like the avatars. I found a couple of people that don't like them, but for the most part, people like the avatars. They like the way they work. I love the states. I love the triggers. I need more triggers. I'm trigger happy, so I would like some more triggers. But I do like the layers, the states, and the general look and feel of the PowerPoint that they took. I thought that was smart.
And I try to stay away from the actual characters in it, because if you stick with those, then you end up with all your courses with the same people over and over again. But I do love the variables. I can do so much with the variables that the triggers don't allow me to, and I love those.
Okay, so you're checking variables for things and doing things based on the variables. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good way to do it. You should come on another time and give a little quick talk on variables.
Just on the variables alone.
Sure, because a lot of people, if no matter what authoring tool you use, if you're not used to that kind of setting of variables, no matter which tool, people get confused. Or if people think a variable, that sounds mathematical, they freeze up. It's not. It's a fairly easy thing. Think of it as a file cabinet. And you can put...
It can be intimidating, that's for sure.
It can be. It's not the easiest, but once you get into them, they're nice and powerful. It like you said, it does make up for some of the triggers. I just want more triggers.
I remember Dave Anderson. He came out here to Southern California and gave an advanced Storyline workshop for us. And one of the things that he showed us was just so much fun. It was a scanning shopping cart where the person was scanning objects on basically a grocery scanner, and it would register different things every time something was scanned.
Neat.
And so that was on the variables. It'd be adding a number every time an object passed over a hotspot.
Mm-hmm. And it works well for that.
Yeah, it does. It works very well for that. It also has like a yes, no, or true, false variable, and it has other variables too.
Yeah, so using variables, you can get pretty much anything you need done, which is a nice thing. Now, just for the heck of it, even though James could, I'm assuming James had some sort of issue because he was all excited about coming on when I emailed with him yesterday. Here is James' website. Well, actually, no, this is his DevLearn talk. He is giving a talk on, in fact, is it variables? I can't read it right from here. I'm looking at a semi-thumbnail, but...
triggers, variables, web objects,
triggers,
and JavaScript.
variables, and talk about that subject. He was going to talk a little bit about that today. So since he couldn't make it today, and I don't know if we'll get him on before DevLearn based on schedules we've got, go see his thing at DevLearn. It looks like it'll be a good talk. And then here is his website. Again, have a look at that later on, and we'll have him on another time.
And he's also has very active information on the Articulate community. So you can always check out his tips and tricks there too.
That's true. And we are trying to get some more Articulate people in. I've asked a couple, waiting to hear back from them to come out. We had Mike Enders in last year, or actually earlier this year, and he did a really good job. So maybe he'll come back, or one of the other people. They have some new community people. We'll get them on. I've been trying to get Dave Anderson on for years, but he just won't come on. He's like, no, I don't want to come on. I don't like being on shows. And that's okay. Dave's a good friend. But
he's a great guy.
He is. He's a gentle giant. And it'd be fun to have him on. He's got a lot of knowledge on a lot of things, but he's camera shy.
Well, I will tell you, he's not very people shy. So hugs to Dave. Dave, hugs to you.
Oh, no, Dave's great.
Yes, he is.
Dave's great. You know, he's one of the guys that he and I can sit for 3 hours talking microphones. It's really rather sick, but it's what we can do.
Well, you have a thing about microphones.
I did. You know, I haven't bought a microphone in ages now. I think I've got so many of them. It's like, I don't think I need another microphone for a while. It's like, how many microphones do you really need? There's got to be a joke in there somewhere, but
at least one for every day of the week.
Yeah. Yeah. What was the joke? How many instructional designers does it take to lift a house or to paint a house?
What's the answer to that?
Well, 1001.
1001.
Yes.
Why is that?
1 to hold the brush and 1000 to lift the house up and down.
I see. Okay.
Oh, joke. By the way,
all right, I didn't know that one.
That used to be a programmer joke, but
okay. Yeah, I was doing
those
things the
jokes
hard
apply
way.
to everybody, so it's okay.
So, your story with Storyline.
We've been using it quite a bit. I'd say right now it's probably the tool we're using the most in terms of our development. We've been doing a lot of marketing type stuff with it, branding courses, just a lot of stuff, and everybody who's using it is enjoying it. It's fun. It's a fun tool. Nobody's, I don't hear people griping or complaining as I do with some of the other tools we've used. They enjoy the fact that it works. I mean, there are some bugs, but they're few. I mean, you don't run into a lot of them, and the workarounds are pretty straightforward. But there are some bugs, like any tool. It's not perfect, but I enjoy it. It's not a bad tool to work with. I don't do that much production, but I am involved in it, and half the time I'm training the people in-house on how to use it a little bit better. So that's kind of fun, and that's kind of the same thing you're doing. You train them, get familiar with it. And if people want to get a hold of you, by the way, since you're on and now you're the guest, see, how does it feel? You went from co-host to guest all in one fell swoop.
Yeah, I felt that buzz too.
Yeah, you're totally prepared. And I know you like to prepare ahead of time, so since you weren't going to be the guest, you didn't have anything ready.
Totally ad hoc, yeah. So
that's okay.
Speaking about Storyline a little bit, I do production and I do teaching. So I've done some Storyline workshops to instructional designers in the Netherlands, which was a fascinating trip. I've never been to the Netherlands before. There was a team of designers there from Belgium, the Netherlands, and Germany. So I was the basic only English speaker as a first language. They were all there as English as a second language. And we had a blast.
They probably speak English pretty well, though.
The Nederlanders, they speak English very well. And it's interesting that the music in the hotel lobby was American 80s music.
Oh, really?
I thought that was really interesting. But yeah, they're wonderful, wonderful people. They really are. And the Germans and the Belgians kept up just fine. And we talked not only about Storyline, but the importance of using really good instructional design behind it. You can't just take a PowerPoint, import it, call it a Storyline. It really doesn't work for e-learning. But one of the things we've been doing here at Everest is doing video production and putting it into e-learning. And it's multi-layered interactive video that was filmed with the purpose of being interactive. And we're able to use Storyline to put dots on the screen while somebody's talking, and you can click on it, and you can see more learning from it, and it's embedded video. So layer on layer of video, 1 or 2 minute video segments at a time.
Now, I'll put you on the spot. I don't know if you're allowed to show it because you and I have a lot of non-disclosure agreements. Can you share anything? Can you show anything at all?
I would love to say that I have time to build things just to show off. Unfortunately, all of it's confidential and proprietary.
I know. Don't you hate that? Because some of the best work you ever do, you can't show anybody.
Well, see, now, if I knew ahead of time I was going to be the guest, then I could have asked some of my
Sanitize
clients,
it,
hey,
yeah.
can we show off some of your stuff? So shout out to my folks. I'm not showing your stuff online, but I would love to. There's quite a number of happy courses that
Yeah, it's fun.
show off a lot of storyline.
Yeah.
But one of the things that we ran across with Storyline, God bless them, you know that they're really thinking about these LMSs, because when you put the video into your course, unless you have good bandwidth, some of those videos won't play.
Right.
They'll stagger. They'll start getting choppy.
Mm-hmm.
So they have an internal compressor. And unfortunately, it compresses video by about 80%.
Ooh.
It's a huge compression. So
it becomes a
we have
slideshow
workaround
by
for
the
that.
time it's done, right?
Yeah, it's grainy as heck. I mean, we film in full HD. So when it comes out in the LMS, if we test it, we test the LMS. Can it handle the HD? So we actually go into the zip file after it's been published for the LMS, and we'll replace the videos with the originals.
Oh, okay. Yep.
But you have to rename them according to what Storyline called them.
Okay.
So it'll be video, some kind of alphanumeric serial number, and then the resolution or the size of it. And then you manually look at each video. Okay, which video is this? Okay, that's this one. Rename your old video. And
Now, how does that
just
affect
play it
performance?
again. Oh, on their particular LMS, it doesn't affect it at all.
Okay.
It tracks perfectly. It's not laggy. One of the ways to do that is that the very first slide or two should not include a video.
Right. That's a Flash thing, actually. And
Yeah.
I think it's also an HTML5 thing. I've seen that issue where any kind of external call or external content doesn't work well on the first slide. That was an old Flash problem. You had to always give it like an empty slide or something beforehand to fake it out, and then it works fine.
Yeah, so the very first slide, we have a very short intro video. It's 10 seconds long. It has no problem loading. But the next few slides after that, no video at all, because then it allows in the background for all the videos that come after to load up in that Flash.
Yeah, and sometimes what you have to do is in the beginning create like a quarter-second slide. Doesn't have to be much. A short slide, and then whatever's afterwards usually kicks in okay. You have a short video in the beginning, so that's probably fine. But if you have longer things or animations or anything really with a lot of stuff in it, it's easier to just create that fake stub, if you will, and then that does a pretty good job. I know that works in Captivate as well as Storyline, and pretty much anything Flash, if you go Flash. Have you been using the HTML5 version of it or component of it?
I always publish with it, just in case somebody is using their iPad or their mobile device to access the client's LMS. But for the most part, they are not mobile friendly yet.
Okay.
So we have a lot of clients that just aren't ready for mobile yet, but we always design in case they go that way.
Yeah, I think we've done one so far that was mobile, and it ran well. Actually, I was surprised at how well it ran on the mobile environment, whether online or offline. It actually did a pretty good job. So their player works pretty well. No major complaints there. I know they update it pretty regularly, and seems to do a good job. But I'm curious what's going to come in the next version. I don't know when the next version's coming out, but when it does, I'm curious what they're going to add, what kind of features. A lot of people have been asking for libraries to store stuff. Stuff is not duplicated for the most part. They do check to see if it's been used somewhere and they don't duplicate it, but it'd be nice to see a library where you have all your assets so that you know exactly where things are. That's one of my wishes, and my biggest gripe. If I have any one gripe about Storyline, it's this one. And that's pretty good because I can gripe a lot. But my major gripe is when you go into scenes and you return from a scene back to your timeline, to your major timeline, your first timeline, your first scene, if you will, and you hit a back button, you wind up back in the scene. And you hit a back button again, you wind up back in your main time, and you go into a recursive loop unless you code every single button with the back button being the previous slide. Because they treat their back button as a last visited. So it lends itself to a lot of tedious button programming. Have you run into that?
Well, I'm not one to use a lot of the built-in triggers and
No,
stuff
we create
like
our
that.
own buttons, but even still,
Yeah.
it creates grief
So-
because previous isn't previous, it's last visited.
Well, for instance, right now we're creating a course that is basically chroma-free. There's no player.
Okay.
All the buttons are manually placed in there
Yeah.
just for the visual effect of it,
Yeah,
to
that's
give
what
it
we do.
something, a
Yeah.
look other than storyline.
Yep.
I know there's a lot of times I open a course or I see some kind of online learning online, other people's samples and stuff, and I can say, oh, that's Captivate.
Mhm.
Oh, that's storyline. Oh,
Right.
that's presenter. Sorry. But I don't want to have that look. A lot of times I want it to be agnostic. I want it to be development program agnostic. So really nobody can tell what it was built in unless they actually get the source file.
Yeah.
So I like doing that kind of thing. And then I program all the buttons anyway. One thing I like about the storyline, and it's pretty much the same for most development systems, is that you copy a button and you paste it and it keeps all of its triggers with it. So once you program it right the first time, it should work the same every other time.
Yeah. I'm wondering here. Let me see if I can get James on. He just sent me a note. I think there was confusion on the scheduling.
Oh,
May have been my
okay.
fault.
does that mean I might be off the hook?
Yeah, a little bit. Let's see if we can get him on real quick.
Okay.
So I'm going to. I'll remove you from having to be front and center. So I'll be front and center, looking the other way. So let's see if I can get him on now.
Okay. I'm on the screen saying hi to people. There's Rick.
James.
Hello.
Hey, James. How are you? Sorry for. I guess we had a little bit of a scheduling snafu. That's not the first time. Trust me. I'm going to put you full screen. We're actually on the show right now. We're recording and we are live. So welcome to the instant real world.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Well, James, how are
Glad
you
I can make
today?
it even though I'm late.
So what we're going to do real quickly is if I can get a quick sound check out of you, make sure that I've got good audio on you.
Sure. Sound check. Sound check.
Okay, I'm
I wish-
getting good
I
levels.
wish I was a rock star, because then. then I
Yeah,
don't have to do
check,
that
check, check, check. Okay, so I've got good sound on you. We've been talking about storyline a little bit while to see if I got a response from you. When I did, I said, oh, good, let me give you a call back. But we've been on for about, oh my gosh, we've been on like about 20 minutes. So anyway, let me get you on the screen here. And for everyone, this is James Kingsley.
Hello, everyone.
And,
Hi, James. Welcome.
Thank you, Tricia.
And I need to fix one thing here, which I have incorrect. So let me go fix your lower third. For some odd reason, that is wrong.
So what are we saying on a storyline? It's awesome. It needs help.
I'm going to let you and Diane talk for a moment while I fix one thing.
Okay.
Diane, you're
Hi
on.
there, James.
Hi, Diane.
Hey, I'm glad you were able to join us. Where are you in the world?
I'm in Richmond, Virginia.
Richmond, Virginia. I thought so because that's what I saw on your eLearning Heroes profile.
Yeah.
And I see that you are an MVP. How did you get started in that?
That's a great question. So I used to work for a large power company, and we started rolling out Articulate Presenter there. And it just, I'm a tinkerer, so I'm all the time trying to improve the products, take them apart, put them back together. When I was a kid, I used to take the can opener apart, see if I could make it run faster, put it back together, that type of thing. And so I was tinkering a lot with Presenter, and I started posting some blog posts tentatively at first, because really what I was doing was taking apart some of their code and rebuilding it, and so I was a little nervous, about what the response might be. But their response was overwhelmingly, open to that, and they embraced it, and so we started having some conversations, and then they asked me if I wanted to be an MVP, which now they're calling superheroes, I think. The MVP program kind of converted over to superheroes. But yeah, it's been a great experience working with them.
Oh, that's fantastic. I see a long list of tips and tricks in there, and I understand you're presenting at DevLearn as well about variables and triggers.
Yeah, for Storyline, I'm presenting at DevLearn. I forget what the exact title of it is, but it's something like Advanced Triggers and Variables with Storyline. And it's mostly about using JavaScript with Storyline, because we find a lot of times to accomplish what we need to do, we offload some of the logic to Storyline, and then, to JavaScript. Let the JavaScript run, calculate, whether or not somebody got the interaction correct, and then you can report back to Storyline correct or not correct, and let Storyline do the grading, talking to the LMS and stuff. So that's what the presentation will be on. And it's a BYOL, bring your own laptop, so folks will be able to come and participate.
Well, that sounds exciting. Now, I just have to let you know that you made my head spin around talking about JavaScript. That some people are already nervous about triggers. So, triggers are basically a way of using numbers and true-false to make buttons do certain things, or to make the course itself do certain things based on input. But how do you get the JavaScript in there? Last time I checked, there was no thing, hey, enter your own JavaScript here. How do you get that in there?
There is indeed. So in the panel to the side where you can select the different triggers that you can add, like when a user clicks a button, do this, So one of the things you can have it do is run JavaScript. And so you can paste your JavaScript right in there, and it will output that along with it. Normally, it's a great start, but it's not quite enough to do some of the things we want to do. So sometimes we have it use a web object, because one of the wonderful things about the new version of Storyline is you can have multiple web objects on the screen as well. So we can use a web object, or sometimes we write a separate JavaScript function, and then when the user clicks a button, we just run that function, because we can fit more stuff into it that way.
Now, you made a comment, the new version of Storyline, is that one of the updates?
No, did I say new version?
You said new version. I was going, ooh.
Oh, no, I didn't mean to say new version. No. In the current version of Storyline.
I always wondered, did I miss something here?
No.
Now, I know my computer's been itching me to update my presenter, but I don't know about a new Storyline. I updated that a while ago.
Did the new presenter come out?
13?
Yeah.
I believe so.
Oh, it did, yeah. I didn't get a notice. That's odd. I have to check.
It has not?
It has not yet.
I didn't think so.
Oh, okay.
Because we're users, so I would have gotten a notice of that.
I figure 13 will be around sometime in 14, 15.
Yeah. There's one thing that never put a date on anything. It's just not a good thing to do.
Yeah, you should name things like by animals or something.
That's
so
a good, the Apple way.
Leopard,
So I don't know. Do you like the new name for Apple's OS, Mavericks? That just doesn't appeal to me.
What? It has nothing to do with cats?
When I think of a Maverick, I think of like a rebel, somebody going against the grain. And really, Mac seems sort of the norm now for most developers.
Yeah. I get a worse connotation, but I won't go there.
Okay.
So anyway, no, it's interesting because you were talking about JavaScript. Now, in Storyline, you don't really have a direct JavaScript. How are you getting into the JavaScript?
Yeah, sure. So I was just telling her that. I don't know if I can share my screen.
Yeah, you can actually if you've got Skype.
Call share screens. Let's see. How many screens am I sharing?
Well, it only allows you to share one, which is probably the one that you're on right now.
All right. So let me see if I can get the right thing over to it before I select it. Okay, this is it. I'm going to shut up this. Oh, I shouldn't say shut up. It was a client calling. So. All right. So let's see if we're going to get my screen up. Yeah, sure. Here we go. So you see on the side here, I have the triggers, and this one I have set to execute JavaScript. So when I double click that, it's just one of the options in there. You're saying what action do you want to take when somebody clicks this button, and I set execute JavaScript. And then when I click these little three buttons, I can type my JavaScript right inside there.
That's interesting. Was that added in one of the updates?
I think it was.
Was it there from the beginning? I don't know how we missed that one.
Yeah.
Now, see, for me, typing JavaScript would be kind of like writing Latin. I have no idea how to write JavaScript.
Well, the good thing is with JavaScript, you don't need to have an idea because nobody else has an idea either, so it works okay.
So long as the computer knows what I'm writing.
That's right.
Sure.
I mean, JavaScript isn't that hard, but for some
there's
reason,
a lot
I didn't
of great
think.
examples on the internet too. You know, if you think of what it is you want to do, like then you can just Google it and find some great examples.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, that is one of the things that I think is absolutely best about the Articulate community. They have such a vibrant, strong community with a lot of people posting screeners and all sorts of stuff that nobody even comes close to that one. And they've just done a really good job on that.
Yeah. So this little bit of JavaScript here, this is for my topic I'm going to be doing, and all it does is I can just type my name into, if I can't type my name, into Storyline, and then when I click the button, it just pops up the little JavaScript alert that says "Hello, James." So that's a really simplistic example there, but just to show you, kind of how it works in Storyline.
So if I hear you right, then if I want to know a particular JavaScript, I can Google it, and chances are somebody in the Articulate community has already written a JavaScript for what I'm looking for.
Maybe.
Well, I don't know if somebody in the Articulate community has, but somebody has. And so then you have to find a way to combine that with Articulate. Right now, there's kind of a limited set of information that you can pass back and forth between Storyline and JavaScript. So I can get from it, anything that the user's typed in, any custom variables I've saved, and from that I can sort of fake some other triggers. So one of the triggers that you can do in Storyline is you can say, you can tell Storyline to watch a variable, and when that variable changes, to take some action. So maybe go to the next slide when, response equals correct or something like that. And so if I set that trigger up in Storyline, then from JavaScript, I can trigger it by changing that variable there. So it's a lot of back and forth in there. I think I'm making it more complicated than it is.
Well, I know that JavaScript, just in my own head, is like, so how do I do this? So you can look up on the web either how to write JavaScript, or you can look up some code for doing what you want to do. But let's talk a little bit about variables. I know that you're going to be presenting variables at DevLearn. What's the biggest fear? What do you hear people saying, I can't do variables, that's too complicated? How do you get them past that?
I think sometimes it's just understanding the concept of how variables work, that they're a bucket that you're going to be able to hold data in, and that you can submit and retrieve that data back from for later. Storyline sometimes makes it a bit confusing because, for instance, the most common way you're going to get some data is you're going to put a text input field on the screen. And so Storyline names that field pretty much the same thing that it names the variable. And so then there starts getting to be some confusion about, am I looking at the variable or am I looking at the object on the screen? And so one of the first things that I normally do is rename the variable that Storyline creates so that I can have a system that helps me understand what's going on.
Yeah, that's a real important thing, because when you have variables, it's always good. We tend to have an underscore V as in Victor in front of every variable so that we know that's a variable. There's just no doubt. And that comes from our programming days. It just makes it easy to figure out what it is on the whole. And a lot of people use variables and they use all lowercase or all uppercase or camel case where you've got some lower, some upper, and then they get so confused because for the most part, I think with Storyline, it's not an issue. I don't think it cares about case that much. But now I'm thinking about it, maybe it does. I don't think it does, but be consistent with whatever you name your variables. I think that'll help, whoever's writing the variables as well as anybody who might have to maintain the code later on. Sure. Just be consistent and be as clear as you can, because a lot of people just default to the weirdest things and they can't figure out what they've done.
Yeah. When you share the file later on and they go in and try to figure out what you've done, it's important to have those naming conventions, comment the code, that type of thing, so that sometimes even myself, 6 months later, a client will ask me to make a change, and I'm looking at it going, what did I do here?
One of the fun parts is, and I think we've all been through this, where you create code, you create something, and then 5-10 years go by, and then you look at it and you just go, oh my God, who wrote this crap? Oh, it was me. Okay. I guess we all had bad days. But it's just sort of funny. It happens to every one of us. It's just hilarious.
What you brought up is a very important point about when you're developing is to name your assets. So not just your triggers, giving them a name you can remember, what is this trigger and what is it doing? But also in your timeline, naming the different images and naming the different shapes and what they're supposed to be doing in the buttons. Because, again, like you said, you come back 2-3 years later looking back at it saying, oh, okay, I need to change this or it needs updating, and you have no clue what anything does anymore.
Sure.
Or even just handing it off to someone else because you have a team of developers.
I see somebody on the chat there is asking about using the JavaScript. What's the difference between the Swift and the HTML output? That's actually one of the advantages for both, I think, Captivate and Storyline and Lectora too. I don't use Lectora as often, but I've played with it. Is if you write it in JavaScript, it's likely to work just as well in both. And so rather than having to create a Flash version and a JavaScript version of your solution, if you can come up with a good JavaScript version, it should work in both environments. So,
yeah, that's true. And I think they're both using, for example, Captivate and Storyline are both using the Rustisi API. So at least the API calls are going to be consistent. That's for the LMS tracking, if you're not familiar with that in the audience. But that makes it just a lot easier to figure out where the problems are if you're trying to track with an LMS. Now, we were talking a little bit earlier about my biggest pet peeve with Storyline. I actually like Storyline on the whole. My biggest pet peeve is when you go to a scene, if you are using back buttons, whether they're your own or whether you're using the player. We don't use the player almost ever. That you have a recursive, you can easily get into a recursive loop where your back button, for example, is really a last visited. In Captivate, that would be a last visited. So you go to a scene, you leave the scene, you jump back to your main scene, and then you hit back button, and you wind up back in your scene. And you wind up going back and forth, so you have to code every back button to go previous, which is not even previous. You have to give it the actual slide name before. That's a pain. That's my only real gripe about. That's the only gripe I really have about Storyline. That's my biggest one. I don't care if they don't do anything else. Fix that one. That's it. and I've had talks with Arlen about that, and he thinks that's the way it should be. You have any opinions on that one?
Yeah, I think that when they were developing the tool, that they're really trying to embrace the concept of multiple branching, using logic to decide where somebody should go to the next scene or the next slide. And so they removed, I guess to keep things simple, they removed some of the things that we're very used to. Next should be next, back is back.
Right.
And in its place, they put these to really, I think, encourage people to think beyond linear course and start thinking about more dynamic courses. We did one recently where they did like an elevator type thing, and so after you could visit any floor in any order you want, and then when you come back to the elevator, the lights are grayed out because you've already visited those floors.
Right.
So that's the kind of thing that they really are hoping that more people do. But the thing is, I still have a lot of clients that just want a straight linear course.
Right, right.
And with very little branching. And so what you said is true. Once you have a little bit of branching in there, then you have to start programming that back button.
Yeah,
I wish it was the opposite. I wish it was that by default it just went to whatever was the slide before that one, not the last slide you visited, the slide before. And then they would have just a drop-down option to say, instead of going to slide 3, jump back to the last slide.
Yeah, I think that's the only thing I would ask for. And on the whole, it's tedious, but it's not a horrific nightmare to fix it. It just takes a little extra time. I love the scenes. I think the idea of scenes is a real good one because, like you said, you can get really interactive. You can have very interesting scenarios built. I think that confuses a lot of people because, by the way, it works well if you use the play bar. I think then it actually does what it's supposed to. The problem is then you're stuck in the play bar.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just one of those things. I think Diane said earlier before we had you on that she rarely ever uses the play bar. I don't think we've ever used it on any course we've done. I'm trying to think. Don't think we have.
Well, and along those lines, one of the top requests I've seen is people want a progress indicator at the bottom, not for the slide, but for the entire course.
Oh, interesting.
And,
Yeah.
and that's,
See, here's a theory. I actually hate those. You know, I have seen so many instructional designers create 700-page courses. It's like, oh my gosh. So you get in, it says, you're on page 1 of 822. And it just, okay, it's time for suicide. That's it. I'm done. I don't want to know what it is. Just keep me posted. It's just, let's keep going to the end. And when you get there, that'll be good.
That's one of those courses you get from the sales team where they give you 120 slides
Oh, yeah.
and say, okay, make this an online course.
Yeah. And you just go, well, can't we break it up? No, they must all be in one thing. They must learn it all at once.
How much of this do they really need to know, and how much is just fluff?
Yeah, those are fun.
yeah.
So James, what do you think about putting in the progress bars? Do you think they serve any useful purpose?
I think it depends on the design of the course. Some courses I do think it serves a purpose. If you have we all want to make wonderful, creative, interactive courses, but the truth of it is sometimes you just need a straightforward,
Sure.
A code of conduct course. You've got to get this done. And so I think actually it gives some people relief to be able to look down and say, okay, I've made it halfway through this. I mean, I know we don't want to design a course where that's the the relief from it, but sometimes that's what you end up with.
Yeah, I
But
remember
for the
we've
most
done a
part,
couple.
I don't think you need a.
No, we've done a couple of things where we didn't have status bars, but we would put a slide here and there with somebody going, "You're almost there, trust me," and things like that. And so we tried to make it a little bit funnier, try to just kind of break the monotony of going straight, especially in compliance courses, things like that. And would say, you're really close. I know you've done 250 slides, but we're close.
We have a few more bamboo shoots for your fingernails.
Yeah.
But going to that very dynamic branching model, how do you start measuring progress on that? Is it just the number of slides that you touched, or is it the interactivities that you've completed?
Right.
So
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
It's a real tough one. I guess you'd almost have to do number of slides. That's probably the easiest way to do it, because when you have number of slides, at least that's a parameter you have. And then how do you touch every? So what if you don't have to touch every slide?
Yeah.
Like you may have branching that you don't need to go to certain areas depending what you answer. Your status will always be off. That's.
And then think about this. If you go back, does that add a slide? Or does it take away a slide? Or is that just redundant? So where is that in the count?
Well, that's true, because then you have a whole set of complexity trying to figure out what slide should go where. Am I counting it again? Wait a minute, we already added it. Do we subtract it? Then you have negative progress, which is always good.
Yeah. That gives the student a real warm.
That's right. You've been taking this course for 1 hour and you're only minus 45 minutes into it.
Normally at the beginning of most of our courses, though, we put something up front that says this course is going to take you about 15 minutes to complete, and so that gives the student an idea of what they're getting into.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always use the triggers, the variables that if you're going branching, you click a button to go to one scene, you come back, that button's now gray. Oh, look, 3 out of 4 buttons are colored, 1 button's gray. I know I have 3/4 more to go. That's kind of a visual trigger to me to progress.
Yeah, and somebody just mentioned in the chat too that you can have a 3-minute long video on a 4-second long slide, and so how do you time that?
I think we call that euphemistic timing.
Yeah, and we have a comment in the chat that says, it really depends, because sometimes you never have a pure linear course. There is some branching, or at least some, and not every slide needs to be seen. So you might have multiple layers. So now how do you count the layers in a progress bar? So progress bars aren't very useful at all.
No, but like James said, I think the best thing is upfront tell them this is about a 15-minute course.
Yeah.
And at least have an idea about how long it'll take. And then you hit them with an hour course, and they'll think they're slow. That's just good practice.
And, along those lines, speaking of, that's another kind of shortcoming, I think, of Storyline, is there's not a way to disable the progress bar. Sometimes, there's a difference between a progress bar and a scrub bar, and sometimes you just want progress to be able to show the person, you're watching 10 minutes of a video, you're 5 minutes into it, but you don't want them to be able to fast forward what you want.
Right.
And Storyline doesn't have a way to shut that off. It's either scrub bar or not, or no bar at all.
Yeah, so that might be one of those feature version 2 enhancements.
And one of the issues I have is that if you have a video in a course and you have other objects that are playing in that course when the slide's playing, if you pause the video, the other objects keep playing. So
right.
It kind of messes the timing of everything up. So you kind of have to have some kind of, I put a hotspot over the screen, over the video, so they can't click on the video and turn it off and on, and keeps the timing with the rest of the slide good.
Oh, so just the hotspot that doesn't allow them to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. Or the other way you can go is just do PDFs for everything.
Yeah.
Well, the PDFs can be pretty interactive now,
Well, that's a good trick. You could actually embed a video into a PDF and launch the PDF from Storyline. That could work. Then they're stuck. They can't get past it.
True.
But then you're going to get all the calls saying. Then you're going to get all the calls saying, "I'm in a PDF and I closed the window and Storyline's gone." Oops.
Yeah.
We hear that all the time. They close the wrong window, or they alt tab.
How about exit buttons? How do we all feel about an exit button? I personally never believe that somebody needs to know how to close a window, but
we tend to put, the problem is some of the LMSs don't allow the close to happen exactly the way you want it. They take control over that, so we have to either point at the upper corner of the window, click on this or your host. We try to put a button at the end of every fairly large button saying exit, leave course, or whatever. But every so often the LMSs we work with, and there's been a lot of them, just don't allow that to work quite well. Or we've had issues, not so much with Storyline, but with Captivate and some other ones. We've had to add time after they hit an exit button where we don't quite exit. We give it about 4 or 5 seconds to make sure that the database is quiesced and everything's been updated. Because some of them have performance issues, or there's just a lot of bandwidth being used and it doesn't update immediately. That's been one issue that we've seen here and there. Speaking of LMS, do you find that Storyline is fairly quiet, not too chatty when it's doing its updating?
No, actually, it doesn't do it. Presenter tended to.
It was very chatty.
Send a lot of data.
Yeah.
Little small chunks back and forth. Storyline though doesn't do it as often, but when it does it, it has a huge bookmark string that just keeps adding up. So every time you add a variable or you jump back and forth from one slide to another, it just keeps appending on to this. And they've done a lot of work to compress it, so they have this complicated algorithm where they convert stuff to like base 64. It's really cool the way they did it to get it down, to get the size down, but it still ends up being really long. We recently did some work and we put it in StormCloud, and now granted, this course was abnormal. It was like 370 slides in this course, but it wouldn't bookmark anymore in StormCloud. And so thankfully StormCloud has an option in there where you can increase the database bucket for that bookmark. And so we had to make it something like 3,000 characters.
Wow,
just to be able to fit that.
To accommodate the string.
Yeah. The flip side of that is it makes it hard. I don't know how often and what you're doing, but sometimes we need to look at a bookmark to figure out what was going on. Somebody calls into the LMS team and says, "Hey, I got kicked out almost all the way done. Can you just give me credit for the course?" And so with a lot of other tools, Presenter, Captivate, Lectora, you can just go look in the database at that bookmark string and say, "Yep, that's the last slide they were on." But it's very cryptic in Storyline. So.
And we'll have to decrypt them a little bit. Maybe that's one of the things that they'll fix in future versions. I know they've gotten requests for things like that.
Yeah.
That'll be kind of a nice fix. Well, we are, unfortunately, at the end of our show. We've gone on pretty long. James, we've got to have you back on.
Thank you.
I think,
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry if I created the confusion, which I may have. I think immediate chat was 9 o'clock, and then the eLearnChat is always at 7:45. So
okay.
I may have accidentally said something wrong. Wouldn't be the first time, but I appreciate you coming on, even though we've only given you about a half hour today. Normally, we try to get more into things, but I think it'll be fun to have you back on and talk about things. And Diane, really appreciate you coming on today. Also, last moment, Dawn is at Presentation Summit. And Diane was very gracious to come join us and help out. Diane's also one smart cookie. I know her personally.
Thanks for inviting me. It was a pleasure hanging out with you and James.
Yeah, it'll be fun. And James, you sound like a smart cookie too. So I think
thank you.
I think we had a good show today. We got some smart people on.
Thanks.
So anyway, for all you guys watching live, thanks for being there. And if you're watching the recording, which will be on Vimeo.com, please subscribe. Give us feedback. We'd love to hear from you. And let us know what you think. We did make a pretty big change today in terms of how we actually capture our video. We are now capturing through hardware versus using software. And I think from what I'm seeing, it looks a whole heck of a lot sharper. So that was part of the goal, to make it clean and to highlight how pretty Diane is. And that's important because she looks great today. Anyway, hey, you guys, have a great one. Thanks a lot for being here again. And we will see you next week on eLearnChat. Take care, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.